under the president's executive order, which suspends the asylum process when the border is deemed overwhelmed. Marisa Limon Garza is the executive director of Las Americas Immigrant Advocacy Center in El Paso. She says the policy assumes asylum seekers have access to phones, internet, and stable places to live while they wait on immigration applications.
It just is out of step with the role of the international stage of how to respond to global migration.
Limon Garza says litigation against the federal government over Biden's executive order is on the table for her nonprofit. I'm Aaron Montes in El Paso.
In Wisconsin, 9 state prison employees, including a former warden, have been arrested in charge of felonies related to recent inmate deaths at a maximum security.
He also mentioned that state corrections language refers to inmates as persons in our care.
It is not a phrase that I use at Waupun Correctional Institution. These people were not cared for.
The 9 are charged with misconduct in public office or abuse of residents in a penal facility. For NPR News, I'm Chuck Quirmbach in Dodge County, Wisconsin.
Researchers at UCLA say about 1 in 5 adult patients coming in for routine health care are using cannabis. That's based on new research published today. NPR's Will Stone has more.
That 1 in 5 statistic comes from a large study of electronic records collected from about 175,000 patients. They had been asked about cannabis use ahead of their annual wellness visit in the UCLA health system. The majority of patients using cannabis said they did so to manage symptoms, the most common being sleeplessness, pain, and anxiety. About 40% said they use cannabis weekly. Inhaling cannabis was about as common as suggesting it. The results generally aligned with previous research. Those between the age of 18 and 29 were much more likely to use cannabis than people over 60. Will Stone, NPR News.
Stocks gained ground on Wall Street today. The Dow was up 96 points. The Nasdaq rose 330 points. You're listening to NPR.
It's 6:04 with Cap Radio News. I'm Devin Yamanaka. A new report shows Sacramento County's homeless population dropped 29% compared with 2 years ago. That's one of the largest reductions statewide. Cap Radio's Chris Nichols has the story.
2 years ago, Sacramento County made headlines with one of California's biggest increases in homelessness when its numbers spiked 67% to nearly 9,300 people. Today, the county's point-in-time homeless count shows dramatic improvement, a nearly 30% decrease to about 6,600. Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg talked about the results on Cap Radio's Insight program with Vicki Gonzalez.
This is not a declaration of victory in any way because there are still too many people on our streets, but it shows that the issue is moving in the right direction.
Steinberg credits expanded permanent housing placements and shelter capacity, along with greater coordination between Sacramento's city and county governments. Bob Erlenbush is an advocate for Sacramento's unhoused community. He says state housing and shelter programs should get credit for the reduction, but he warned that budget shortfalls could wipe away progress.
Those numbers show that those investments work, but we need to sustain it, and it doesn't appear that we're going to.
Erlenbush cited Governor Gavin Newsom's proposal to cut $1 billion in local homelessness funding to close the state's budget shortfall. Chris Nichols, Cap Radio News.
And you can always find more news at our website, capradio.org.
We get support from Convergence Theater Company, presenting Salt of the Earth, an original adaptation of the Blacklisted film, June 6th through 8th at Sutter Theater Center for the Arts in Yuba City. Tickets at yubasutterarts.org/events.
Still ahead on All Things Considered, check in with Brian Wallach, who's been living with ALS for 7 years, and his wife Sandra Abravaya on their ongoing advocacy for ALS patients, families, and caregivers. That's coming up in 15 minutes.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age.
It's 6:06.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Juana Summers. President Biden's executive order limiting asylum claims for most undocumented migrants does not shut down the U.S. southern border, but it is meant to send a message that it's getting harder to get into the U.S.